So we'll move on to emotional healing. So really, what is emotional pain? What is that pain that we want to heal inside of us? Well, it's very interesting that most of us have all four of these inside of us: competence, things about our body, our identity, and our relationship to different degrees. So I'm just going to roughly go through these with you right now. So, competence. You might think that you should be a better wife, a better daughter, a better friend, a better work colleague. So inside of you, you feel this pain because you just don't feel that you're up to the mark. You feel that you should be better. So that's one competence. You might feel this emotional pain within your body, that there's something wrong with you. You're too tall, too short, too fat, too thin, too ugly. You don't like blonde hair. You don't like your auburn hair. You don't like your black hair. All these things that go on cause you emotional pain. Your identity. You believe there's something wrong with your views on life, your views on religion, your views on politics. Or maybe you're too loud. Maybe you're seen as too quiet. There's a feeling about your absolute core identity that feels you're wrong. And so you make up for this and you pretend to be someone else. You create a persona that you think other people will love you more for this if you show up in this different way. Or it could be the relationship. I will only be lovable in my life if I'm pretty, if I'm thin. The poison of this relationship wound is when you use the word if. So be very honest with yourself and ask yourself, are these some of the things I say to myself? Because if you're using that word if, it implies that you are not worthy of love just as you are. So we're all different. We're all very different and we're all wonderfully unique. But emotional pain is made up of these four things. And as I say, we all have a mixture of these. And our wound, basically the site of the trauma, is made up of these things. And you might be able to hear that critical voice, that inner critic, the monkey mind, the one that criticizes you, the one that punishes you. You've had this since you were a small child. And as you grow, it's still with you and it only gets worse. So, what does the impact of this emotional wound have on your life? How do you cope with that emotional wound that you've got right now? So, there's lots of ways of coping, and I've put these down in the PDF so you can work your way through them and be super honest with yourself. So, some people shield themselves, and when we shield ourselves, what we're doing is we're keeping people away from us. We want to stop them seeing our wound. Money and prestige. This is a very, very popular shield. We do whatever we can to become hugely successful in life because if we're rich and successful, people aren't going to annoy us if our identity isn't quite right. Perfectionism. This was me. Massive hand up for trying to be perfect. So I try to make everything perfect in my life. Perhaps you are right now, from trying to create the perfect job to creating the perfect family, wearing the perfect clothes, developing that perfect body. This acts as a shield so others will not criticize you. There's a massive downside to this. It's absolutely impossible to achieve perfectionism, as nothing is perfect. I'm so far from perfect now myself, but I have such an acceptance that this is okay. This is absolutely okay. Trying to be perfect is exhausting. It chews through every ounce of your energy, and you're left depleted to do the things that you really do care about in life. I just got one question here. I'm just going to answer this right now. In fact, I'll come back to that, Nancy. I'll come back to that. But it's a great question, Nancy, and one that we'll all have. We'll all have. So, anger. Anger is actually another shield. Because if you can't achieve money and prestige or perfectionism to satisfy yourself, you will revert to anger. So what happens is you feel angry all the time. So people keep their distance. And that's what you're trying to do with your shield. You're trying to do whatever you can. You must keep people at a distance. Keeping people far away from you means that if they have a go at you, they'll be far away enough not to hurt you. You're continually on the defense, and this anger seeps into absolutely every cell of your body and makes you so unhappy. Silence and visibility. This is actually a camouflage, really. It's not a strict shield. If you keep quiet and you don't speak up, you're not going to attract any attention and you won't get noticed, which means no one will see your wound, because this is what we're doing. We've got to keep people from this wound of ours. You're not really shielding anything, but actually camouflaging yourself. And if you do get hurt, it hurts you really badly. So you end up feeling extremely anxious. People pleasing. My goodness me, this was one of mine. And I think this is super popular with so many of us. And again, it's not an actual strict shield. It's more of an appeasement. You make sure everyone else is happy so they won't attack you. That's one of the reasons why we do this. You try to get everyone to like you so they don't see your wound. And this really doesn't work, as you don't have any power over anyone to like you. So those are some of the shielders, and actually a couple of the camouflaging ones as well. So how do we soothe this wound? How do we numb that pain from this wound? Well, drugs and alcohol is one of the very popular ones to really soothe and numb and keep that wound at bay. And guess what? It works. Alcohol is brilliant, because as soon as you have those few glasses of wine, guess what? Everything seems okay. So it works. It works. It really does work. But the problem is it doesn't last. When that alcohol wears off and the reality shows its head again, we actually feel worse than ever. And the trouble with drugs and alcohol is we tend to need more and more to get the same effect. So it starts off with a couple of glasses of wine, and before we know about it, we're on to 5 glasses to get that same numbing effect. So it does work. It does work, but it doesn't work in a lasting way and actually causes more problems. Sex and relationships. Having many sexual partners without any connection, you actually get that rush feeling from the sex, but it doesn't last and it doesn't fulfill your needs. So you actually end up feeling used over time. But it works in respect that it numbs out that wound. It just does not last, and you're actually in a worse place. Food. I know this is super popular. Many people use food in so many different ways. We soothe ourselves. We either eat too much or we eat too little. Now, what we're doing is when we overeat, we're actually seeking the dopamine effect, that happy feeling, which is a chemical that's produced to make us feel good. And we get this from the food. And this helps us to numb the pain. But when we starve ourselves, we're actually working towards the perfectionism, which in turn numbs the pain. So you can see we are using the food to numb the pain. We're using food when we don't eat to numb the pain. So it works in the short pain. These things all numb the pain, but they have no lasting effect. And what we end up with is a very, very poor relationship with food. And we're either overweight or underweight, and we cause more issues than ever before. So this is a very, very common one. Food is. Overwork. We can become workaholics, because overworking and working extremely hard on ourselves, setting ourselves up with urgent deadlines, setting ourselves up so we're working all day, all evening. This actually keeps us temporarily busy. so we don't face that inner pain. This is often linked to the shield of the money and the prestige as well. And it's a great combination to link the overwork to the money and the shielding one, because you've now got a shielder and a soother that are linked. Media, this has become a really big one. Any screen time, whether that's social media, using digital tools or games, distract you from the pain. And all these things are normal because we want to shield ourselves. We're desperate to keep ourselves from this pain. So the question to ask yourself right now is it working for you in the long term? Are you getting lasting satisfaction from what you're doing? Because all of these things come at a cost. You've got to ask yourself, are you getting value for money? Are you drinking too much, falling into the drugs reliance trap, feeling constantly angry, obsessing about being perfect? All to them to have that maximum shielding. You just want the most shielding you can get and soothing for the minimum cost. Have you the energy and the time in your life for the things that you really want to do? Or is it all taken up with this shielding and this soothing? Really, this is all about your wound. You are spending most of your days droning on in your mind over these wounds. So, how do you configure your life? So, this week, I'd like you to work out what your mixture is of these wounds. So, on paper, list out the 4 different types of emotional wounds and list out how you shield and soothe them. And you'll come up with some of your main shielders and some of your main soothers. This might be for the first time in your life that you are honestly accepting how you shield and soothe from that wound. And ask yourself if you're happy with this. You're investing such a massive part of your life, using so much energy to shield and soothe. I cannot tell you. Ask yourself, is it worth it for the results I'm getting? If it's not, take some time to realize that the drink, the sex, the food, is just numbing your inner pain. That's all it's doing. That's all it's doing. So, what different trade offs are there for numbing and soothing? What can you really see that you are just numbing the pain to do? So, if you're drinking to excess to numb the pain, ask yourself if you can do something else to numb, which is less harmful. And if you use the word if in your vocabulary, you are saying to yourself that you are not worthy of love, simply because the if implies you have to have or be that thing to be loved. So be really, really super aware of your language. So this is a great exercise this week for you to really look into those soothing and those shielding. And feel free to share. If you share in the Facebook group or message me, do share. It's a really important part of this process. And it really helps for you to release and let go. We've all been there. We're all doing similar things. It doesn't matter what it is. We're all in the same boat. And this is where this really helps us to come together. You're really, really not alone.